Good evening, everyone. We might just give it just 1 or 2 more minutes there just for the last few people to come in, and we'll get going there maybe in the next minute or two. Good evening, everybody. You're very welcome to the first in a series of webinars that Limerick Coaching and Games will be running on Wednesday nights for the next 3 Wednesday nights. My name is David O'Dea. I'm West Limerick Games Development Administrator. I'll be joined by James Ryan, South Limerick Games Development Administrator. And the area we'll be looking at this evening is the nursery side of your club, working with your under 6s and your under 8s. I suppose our presentation tonight will be focused a lot on the questions that were sent in from yourselves, and also I suppose our experience over a number of years from coaching in primary schools and coaching in clubs throughout the county. What we'll do is we'll kind of run through the presentation, and if there's any questions at the end, there will be a facility to ask the questions at the end. Both myself and James will be presenting different aspects on it, and hopefully, look, you'll find some of it very informative and very helpful. Obviously, during the times we're in at the moment, a workshop like this probably would be more beneficial, maybe face to face, but that's something we're hoping to work on in the new year, where we'll be able to maybe roll this out in a couple of venues throughout the county. But hopefully you'll get a good idea of the kind of things we're looking at this evening. So just maybe to have a quick look through the content of what we'll be going through tonight. First up there is just what to include in your underage training session. Then talking about fun games and the importance of fun games. We'll be looking at station training also, and how important that is with a young age group, with your 6s and your 8s especially. The Coach 10 model as well, and how we can use that with our underage training as well, and different aspects of that, and how beneficial it can be to first-time coaches and coaches getting involved. The session layout then as well, about how to organise a session, how to manage your time, that I suppose that by laying out your cones early on, how you can go from maybe transition from one drill to another, or another game to another game, with very little movement of cones, and it keeps the continuity of the session going well. Then looking at age appropriate training, so looking at what is beneficial for your under 6s or your under 8s, and what we should really be focusing on at those early ages. The House of Fun then is just a model that James will go through, that kind of works on all the different aspects of coaching and development with a child. And then we're just going to look at the questions at the end and kind of review those. And again, as I said, after we're kind of gone through the reviewed questions, we'll give you an opportunity, maybe if there's something you might want more clarification on, or if there's something that we mightn't have covered and we might have missed, we'd be more than happy to give our opinion and give some information on that. So I'm going to hand you over to James here now. James is going to take the first few slides, and it'll come back over to me again, and we'll kind of be going over and back. But there you go. So James.
Yeah, perfect. Can you hear me there, Dave? Yeah.
I can, yeah.
Yeah. Perfect. All right, guys. Yeah, just to start with there, I'd like to echo what David's after saying. Looking down through a couple of names there, there's a couple I know, and there's a couple that I don't know, but you're all very welcome. As David said, a lot of the presentation we done up tonight was done on your questions, and some of the questions you asked, we looked through them all and we categorized them. A lot of them were very similar. There was a couple individual questions, all right, but some great questions asked, and it was good to see that a lot of them were kind of generic, the same kind of things coming through. So as David said, hopefully you'll find something useful coming out of this. And again, there's time to ask questions at the end. And the last slide is a thing done on your questions. We'll go through it there. So look, any teachers there online or anyone in, I suppose, a line of work or organisation, you have to plan. And like, I'm not saying you need like a whole PowerPoint presentation before you go to a training session or anything like that. It's just have an idea what you're going to do. And like David said there in the content, there's 2 or 3 maybe different ways or systems you can set up under as training. Me, myself, personally, I think at under 6 and under 8, station training is the way to go. I'm sure some of you do it, some of you've never heard of it before. We're going to be going through it in a minute. But look, it even says it there, make time to save time, because if you're not there and you're not organised, you don't have your cones down and they're coming up running up, Chuck, will you tie my helmet, will you tie my shoe, all this kind of stuff. Can we have a match? And where's Johnny today? If somebody's missing, you're going to get asked about 1,000 questions, as you well know, anyone that's been with an under 6 or under 8 group. So just to be there 5 minutes early, have a plan in your head, have your cones down, have your coaches or assistants where they are, it makes life very easy. So look, it's just the importance of planning is unbelievable. We couldn't say it enough, and it just makes your life easier. So just go on to the next slide there, Dave. So I suppose a lot of us know that from playing ourselves, and we'll call it the universal way of coaching, I suppose, is you do your warm-up, whatever it may be, your couple of fun games for young people, your couple of stretches with adults or whatever, and then you do your couple of drills, and then you probably threaten or warn or kind of whatever you do with the kids during the drills. You say, if you do this right, or if you stay tuned in now, we'll have the match at the end. And we're not saying that's the right or wrong thing to do. There's just different ways and systems of doing that now, and maybe the different ways of doing is keeping kids more entertained. So as I said, we're going to do the warm-up first, and we'll leave the fun games a minute because that's going to be the next slide. But the ABCs there, for anyone that doesn't know, is just agility, balance and coordination. RJTs is there as well, running, jumping and throwing. And as Dave says, we go into schools most days, Monday to Friday, and we take the junior seniors out. And what I often see in schools, and a lot of people can relate to this, that kids' agility, balance and coordination in junior, seniors and first is very good, very adequate. They could nearly squat better than the 5th and 6th, even ourselves, adults, or whatever. But the thing about it at that age, if you don't keep doing it at that age, they'll lose it. So like I always make the point of coaching courses, if you think of a young lad in 6th class, think of the amount of times they've sat down in the amount of a day. They get out of bed, they come down, they sit down to have their breakfast, they get into a car to sit down to go to school. They're in the car, then they drive to school, they get out of the car to go into class to sit down from 9 to 3, albeit their lunch break. So we're sitting down an awful lot. So how many times in the round of a week does a kid, whether it be 5 or in 6th class or in secondary school, how many times does a kid go lower than a chair to bend? And like, if we bring that back to a sports point of view, if you want to crouch lift the football, or if you want to jab lift or roll lift the ball, or even if you want to jump off the ground, you have to bend lower than a chair to get up, and you have to bend to get down to get the ball. And look, we all know, and some of you are doing coaching there, that like if you even take the football championship at adult level in Limerick, the amount of crouch lifts that are missed, and it's because we're just sitting more and we're not hinging enough. So agility, balance, coordination, and it'll come up there in the House of Fun in a while, the importance of being able to move in different directions, to have balance, coordination, to be able to run, jump and throw. And you can see it there in the All-Ireland final coming up, Waterford and Limerick. Like if you took Kyle Hayes, for example, the weekend, the movement of that man up and down the field, it was of a professional level. It was like a winger in a Premier League game. So if we come back to what we're talking about here, just engagement straight away, because we saw with a lot of the questions, keeping the kids concentrated and how do you keep them entertained and all that. We see it in schools and doing club sessions the whole lot. Doing a fun game at the start, whether it be with everyone or with a couple of kids, whatever, whether it be green light, red light, whatever it is, if you can do a fun game and if you can make it a little bit competitive where they have to concentrate to win, and we'll be explaining that in the next slide, it's the best way of getting them engaged. So when you do red light, green light, and if a lad comes to training hyper, and I don't know, there could be have a Mars bar for they come in full of sugar and they're running resting. If you put up the red cone and they move and they have to go back to the start and there's somebody ahead of them, well, they won't be long tuned into the game and wanting to win. And it's just a great way of getting them tuned in and straight away onto your session. We'll talk about that more in a while. So skill development, I don't want to be scaring any, I suppose, new coaches here. And a lot of the lads that have been trained under 6 and 8s for a couple of years will relate to this. But under 6 coaches probably have the most important job in the whole club, and especially from a hurling point of view, because you're teaching them the correct technique and the correct hands. Like, so if an under 6 hurling coach is there going, what am I going to do with these kids for the whole year, and I don't have a clue, but if you could get your group of under 6s holding the hurley right and getting the C swing and even able to hit a ball, you've one hell of a job done the whole year. Like, it's very important that they get their grip right. So you have to take it, right, and think of it psychologically. A 6-year-old, everything they've ever done, everything they've ever caught, they've always used their dominant hand. So now straight away when a 6-year-old comes through in January or February of the new year, whenever we get to go back on fields, you're going to put a hurley into their dominant end, and you're going to ask them to do everything with their non-dominant end. So now they're gone from a totally different way of thinking straight away. So I'm sure a lot of you have often seen the small hurley technique with the 20-inch hurleys, and they're soloing and catching and flicking the beanbag up and catching and things like that. It's all extremely important moving on in a player pathway for all these young kids. So don't ever underestimate even just having the hurley in the hand and getting them to do fun games. And we've talking about that even though the kids are doing a fun game and you have them engaged, as a coach, if we're thinking about it enough, you're actually doing 2 or 3 different things with them while they are only trying to have fun, even in your fun game. So, like skill development, like when you're talking about under 6s and under 7s and 8s and that, like probably technique is more important than development. As in, like if you go to an under 6 blitz or like you see a 4-side match, whatever it is, you don't see a massive gap between the kids because they're nearly all at the same level. But if you have a coach and eye, or you know the correct technique, you'll see a lot of difference in the way they're holding the hurley and what way it should be and all things like that. The skill development and the one thing about it is the station training. You see it there in brackets, and we'll be talking a bit more about it in a while. The one thing I would be promoting is station training. So probably if we're doing this course in front of you where there was contact, we could line out cones. But if anybody's ever done a circuit course or a Tabata in a gym or anything like that, station training is just where, like the one thing I'll say about tonight, myself and Dave, like we are the perfect coaches now tonight because we've no kids in front of us. It's easy to say, oh, you should do this and that. We don't have kids roaring and screaming at us with hurley's too big, hurley's too small and all that. I always make that point just in case you think, oh, you're great here talking about it online, but try taking kids in their own. But station training helps. So if you have 24 6 and 7-year-olds, say an under 8 team, and you have 4 coaches, you could split them into 4 groups, and then just say the first coach could be doing throwing and catching, the second coach could be hitting the ball over and back, the third coach could actually have them in a game, and the 4th coach could be doing a fundamental movement. And they just change from every station in an adequate amount of time. So if you give them 10 minutes in each station, then they can rotate. We'll be talking about a bit more later, but I know it involves the hardest work in all the station training is to be properly organised start to the year. Because look, we all know the way this starts in a club, that who are we going to get to train the under 6s this year? And next thing you say, he played hurling, his son is on that team, and you might get lobbed on with a team, and it could be only 2 there with 30 lads. So the first thing I'd be saying is try and round up a couple of parents. There's often a teacher that might get involved. There's a lot of mothers watching on that might get involved because our father on the sideline might get involved. So like even say to the coaching officer in the club or whatever, is there anybody else that might be willing to give a hand out here? They don't have to be a genius. They don't have to have all the knowledge in the world. You might only want them to stand at a cone and literally watch them to throw the beanbag over and back, and you as a coach could show them that instead of trying to catch the ball out like that they turn their hand out like that to catch the ball, whatever it may be. So the last one thing there you're probably wondering is revising last week. Like, look, I often do it myself. Sorry now, Noel, I know you're boss down the line, but you'd often do it yourself when you're doing a session in the club, whatever. You might have done your warm-up, you might have done a load of drills with the kids, you might have had a hard day at work, it might have been in school. Next thing you go into a match and straight away you might end up talking to a coach or just kind of daydream, whatever. The point on the revising last week is, or even if you go to the under 8 and under 10 blitzes, the match is the best way of seeing what your team is doing wrong or checking out for faults in technique and all that. So anybody who's coaching for a couple of years will know what I'm on about here. If there's a kid switching hands or something like that, and next thing you have to spending 20, 25 minutes getting their dominant hand in the hurley. Now you have them catch him with their non-dominant hand, catch him with their non-dominant hand. And next thing you said, I'm after doing great work there for the last 20 minutes. What happens the very minute they go into a bit of pressure or the match or there's somebody marking them, they go back to habit. And next thing, everything you're after doing for the last 20 minutes can fall there straight away. So the one thing we'll be trying to say is, the days you're active and the days you're enjoying coaching and you're enjoying it, try and stay focused for them days and try and have a thing that we call coach and eye, just to see are they making the same mistakes in the drills in the match, because it's in the match you see and you can always bring them back. We'll be talking about in a minute about the coach 10 model, where it's a great way of bringing them back if they're doing something incorrectly in a match, where you can bring them back. Just games, again, it's going to come in on the coach 10 model, but it's a game if you can count it, especially with 6 and 8 year olds. You're probably saying, like, you can't have games in the whole time because they don't have the proper amount of skills to play a game for like an hour on a training or anything like that. It's just not feasible. But a game, and Dave's going to be talking in a while, can be just one opponent and one goals. It can be very, very simple. And an awful lot of the things we're going to talk about tonight, we might have talked for a long period about it, but when we bring the whole thing back, it's going to be very, very basic. Fun games, modified games, and small sided games are obviously just 3 different types. So just move on to the next slide there, Dave. So we run about fun games, and Dave's going to send you on a file there in a while through, or Noel might actually send it on through an email sheet. It's just a list of fun games, age appropriate games you can play with 6, 8 and 10 year olds. It's a good document to look at. But we just put down a couple of them there already. Again, red light, green light, just a great way to get them tuned in if they're hype or whatever it is. The one thing we'd say about all these games is, if you think of a 6-year-old, they only know a couple of things, to be fair. They only know numbers, colours, and maybe body parts. And what I mean by body parts, you can do a simple game there. 2 of them are at a cone, you say head, shoulders, knees, and then you say cone, and the first person to pick up the cone is the winner. You can put a ball in the cone or a beanbag. And it comes back to my point again about the kids are doing one thing, but you're trying to do another. So if you do that, head, shoulders, knees, and that, you're testing their reaction, and that's a massive thing in hurling or football as they get older. How quick they can react to a breaking ball and the whole lot. And I know, I'm not foolish. I know they're 6-year-old, you're on about reacting to a breaking ball, but it's all relative as they get older. How do they get better at reacting to stuff? By doing it at training. So it's just something to keep in mind. I'm sure you know some of these games, stuck in the mud, pair tag, copycat, cups and saucers. Just one thing to bear in mind with fun games is, and we always say to make it age appropriate. And what I mean by that is, like, if you take pair tag there, for example, I see it in schoolyards the whole time, where you have junior infants out and you put 2 behind the cone, right? And if you do a simple thing like run out to the cone, go around the cone and run back, right? A couple of things you will guaranteed to do, universal in every school in Ireland, whatever you ask them to run around the cone. Number one, they will go way around the cone. And what I mean by way around the cone is, instead of taking a sharp turn or whatever, they'll nearly do a loop at a tarmac yard to go around the cone. They will turn the very same way all the time. I suppose I see a lot of inter-county warm-ups and they go out to a cone and turn and they go around the same way all the time. So that, even we're on about coaching, a simple thing of maybe putting out 2 different colour cones or whatever to get them turning both ways. They will run with their head down inevitably and definitely if you add a ball into it, they will run with their head down, and unless you tell them to get their head up, they will run with their head down all the way till they retire, because you have to be told these things at times. And the last thing is, and again it's kind of going into a running technique kind of a thing, but I'm no expert on it, but I know that if you want to run fast, you have to move your hands, and an awful lot of them will run with their hands by their sides. So we're on about coaching here, we're on about coaching under 6s and 7s and very basic stuff. Like, there's a lot of coaching in even just running out around the cone and back. So when I'm in the schoolyards and all that, it's the first thing I always start with, because it gets their steps up, gets the heart rate up, and gets them just run out around the cone. And I always say, keep your feet close to the cone when you're turning and move your hands. And them 2 simple pieces of information can solve a multitude of things. back to the fun game. Like, the one thing I'd say about running out to a cone and coming back and all that, when you're doing your drills, it's very, very hard not to put them into straight lines and doing so and all that, and it's perfectly fine. But your fun games is a great time to do a couple of things like copycat or cups and saucers, where they're actually running in between each other bilaterally and going all different directions. And again, we're on about agility there a while ago. It's a great way of getting them to get their head up or to stop when somebody's passing them out and things like that, because you can't, it's not, like, I'm sure we could think of ways, but it's very, very hard to do it in drills because you're trying to give them a ball, they're trying to concentrate on the ball, they might be trying to hit the ball, and then you're trying to put people in their way. It's just, there's too much going on for a 6-year-old or a 7-year-old. It's not going to happen. So there are just a couple of fun games. Again, Dave will send out the document on it, or Noel might email it to you, but there's a load of fun games on it. And it's just to bear in mind, even that game, that lines 1, 2, 3, that's just a simple thing. I've seen it being called shipwreck shore. There's a load of different names for it. It's just basically they come out, so you call line number 1, then you call line number 2, and then you might call line number 3, but point at 1. And when you trick them and fool them, it's a great way of getting them in interaction and getting their attention straight on you straight away from the start of the session. So if we just move on to the next one there, Dave. So this is the station training thing we're on about again. It's just a simple graph of what we were on about. So just like, there's millions of ways of doing this. We're not saying this is the right or wrong thing. And back to the planning thing. The good thing about planning for an under 6 or an under 7 or even under 8-year-old, like if you go into, or any can remember being in junior, seniors or first class, you go in for a long, like a week or 2 weeks, and you could be doing the same thing for that week, because repetition is the only way to gain knowledge. You have to do it over and over again. So we're going to be talking about variety an awful lot here in this, but at the end of the day, like, you need to be getting them to hold the hurley right and to solo and to flick the beanbag, and you need to be doing the same things for long periods of time for them to improve their skill development because they're at a young age. So this is just king of the ring. So basically, if you look at the graph, it's activity 1, there's going to be one coach there, man and that. Activity 2, another coach, man and that. Activity 3, activity 4, and you could have a game-based one, running one, whatever it is. And when you rotate them every 10 minutes, and they will be talking about a pitch layout then after that. It's just a simple way of keeping the kids entertained. It makes it easier on the coach. The kids actually get more ball contacts, they get more games. It's a win-win all around. So if we just go on to the next one, Dave. Now, this is the station training is the one that I would highly recommend, definitely for under 6s and maybe under 8 age group. The next one is just something that we put in because it came up in a lot of questions about different kind of scenarios, and we'll be going through that in the last slide in a while, but it's called the Coach 10 model. So 2 questions a player will always ask you at the start of each training session is, can I have a ball if you're setting up or whatever, and can we play a match in a game? And the Coach 10 model, I hope I can describe it very quickly and easily, is they come on, they do their training session, you might have a bit of a fun game with them, and then you sometimes throw them into a match. Like if you take the Limerick senior hurling team at the moment, I've seen it myself. Paul Kinnock might Kelly might go away and do a warm-up with the team, whatever, and he might they'll be obviously stretched and doing all their warm-ups and mobility and all that crack, and next thing you might just throw them into a match. The one thing about that then is you put them into a match, and then you might be watching them or whatever, and you see you might put them into a throwing and catching game, right? Just simple as that. Under 6-year-old throwing and catching. Next thing you see that they're all trying to catch the ball. They're waiting for the beanbag instead of catching it, clawing the beanbag out like that and getting that correct technique. So you might just bring them out, put them into pairs, or even give them all a beanbag, throw it up and catch, throw it up and catch. Then you might just bring a bit of a time element into it to challenge them and see how many times you can catch it in 30 seconds. Off they go. To try and beat their first score, put them back into the match. And that's simply what Coach 10 model is. You put them into a match, you see what skills are breaking down, bring them back out, stop the game, fix the skill, fuel the will, put them back into the match. Just one important point there about when you're trying to teach a skill in that. Obviously, you're trying to challenge them and you're trying to make it age appropriate. And then you might say, oh, they're getting a bit bored of this. So if you take a kid, and we see it again every day in schools, you take a kid and he's trying to roll lift the ball, right? Maybe 8-year-olds, right? 8 or 9-year-olds be done. They're trying to roll lift the ball, and next thing you see, a kid and he's roll lifting the ball, but he's catching it with the hand that should be on the hand of the dominant hand. And next thing you go over and you tell him, right, catch it with your non-dominant hand, the other hand, straight away, just to be aware of it. When you bring in a time element into that, or you challenge them, it comes back to nearly somebody marking you and going back to habit, or else cheating will come in. You just have to be very careful when you're putting a time element into it to be, I suppose, cautious or willing to let cheating go ahead. So that's kind of where I'm going to let you go back to Dave, I think, and I'll be talking to you again about certain things as we go on.
Lovely, James. Perfect. So I suppose I'm going to take it off. We kind of looked at the station training there. And what I'm kind of looking at now, I suppose, is the organisation element of it, and kind of laying out your session and laying out your pitch, and kind of talk through it as best I can, and just kind of maybe giving us kind of practical ideas of how we can set up a training session, like James said there now, about coming down maybe that small bit earlier before we're training at 7 o'clock. We're not rocking in at 7 and kind of wondering, oh my God, what am I going to do now when there's kids arriving in and they're full of energy? And that's one thing I suppose we have to understand as well, like that, is this for a lot of kids at 6 and 8 years of age, it could be the highlight of their week, getting down, playing with their friends, playing with their teammates, being part of their club. So we want to try and be as organised as we possibly can, and that they enjoy themselves as much as they possibly can in that hour, 45 minutes, or whatever we're there for on the night. So I suppose what I'm looking at here is just a pitch layout for a session maybe, and what I'm looking at is that this layout is for 18 players. So again, I'm just picking 18. Your club might have more or less, but you'll get the idea of what we're trying to set up here. And what I've done here is just kind of set out 3 mini pitches. And with the 3 mini pitches, that as the players arrive in, you're giving them a colour bib. So you have your pitches laid out straight away. You have your cones as your sidelines. You have your goals or your poles set up, or your large cones, or maybe they're the portable goals, or whatever it may be. And as they come in, then you're getting them into groups of 3. So 3 versus 3 games are going on. It might be a 2 versus 2, but no more than 3 versus 3. So we have a 2 versus 2 outside, someone in goals, and maybe after every goal, we're changing who the goalie is, and we're putting someone different in goals. So what we're doing then is we're moving on then, and as the game comes in, if you can get a coach, a parent to get involved, and it might be the easiest way of trying to get someone involved. Just you watch the game here, keep an eye on what's going on. If it looks dangerous, give it free. Just try and keep it as safe as possible, and just keep the game going. It might be a great way of getting someone even involved with your club. Now, so we've someone. So as the players are coming through now, you've your game set up. They're active. They're involved. As James said, a lot of them can be coming in hyper and really enthusiastic about the session. You're putting them into the game straight away, and it kind of comes back to the slide we had previous. The first thing they're going to ask is, can we play a game? And sometimes we bribe them and we'll say, oh yeah, we'll play a game at the end. But you can be guaranteed if you can play the game at the start, okay, it'll encourage them to come early, encourage them to be on time. They won't want to miss the game, and be putting pressure on the parents to be there on time and get there on time. So just very simply, by setting out your cones like that, you've set out 3 small mini pitches and they can play their game. And a bit like what James was saying earlier, that if there's something that is glaringly obvious that they're maybe controlling the ball, stopping the ball, maybe they're striking, you'll see it straight away in the first couple of minutes of a game, and it gets them active and gets them going. Okay, James spoke about the fun games then. So we've just a fun game here, and as I said, we'll kind of send on what games we have later on. But this game is just a basic tag game. So still within the 3 pitches that are set out in your groups of 6, okay, with 1 coach per 6, bit like our station training as well, but we're all doing the same thing. We've 1 person on, and it's basically a tag game to get to the other side. Okay, so when they're in this kind of a game, then you have 1 person on, and they're trying to get past them. So they're trying to evade them, moving away from, as James mentioned earlier, about starting at 1 cone, running around the other cone, and coming back to the start. So with this game now, they're going to be trying to avoid getting caught. They're going to try to avoid stepping outside the boundaries. They're going to have to try and move left, right. It's multi-directional. They have to. There's that bit of spatial awareness within running in a narrow channel or a narrow area, and also trying to avoid, maybe they might have to go forwards, backwards, side to side, and all those different movements have been brought in, but it's registering in their brain straight away, I need to use all these different parts of my running to get from one side to the other. Okay, and then the bit of teamwork then is if there's someone caught up or someone in caught, and it might be a 4 versus 2, and 2 are trying to catch the other 4. It's helping them to work as a team, maybe to catch one person to get them on, that they're not doing stuff individually, and you can have a quick chat with them about that as well in such a simple fun game like that. Also, there's lots of variations in this game. So its most basic form is running from one side to the other, okay, but what we're doing, what we can also do then is introduce bibs. So basically that they have a bib maybe hanging out of their shorts, and if the bib is caught, so it's giving the child reaching out, that hand-eye coordination to try and catch the bib, and if the bib is caught, they're on with them. You could introduce a ball where it might be just hand passing, or a soft ball that they have to throw it between the hip and the shoulder, and if they hit them, they come on with them. So it's getting that bit of hand-eye coordination again. Also then as well, then you could change it then, we'll say towards the end of it, that it could be 5 versus 1, so there's one person trying to get past 5, and you're trying to give the advantage to that one person, so you're asking them maybe the 5 that are on to hop or to crawl, or they might have to face backwards or sit in the ground and can't get up until the person starts running, whatever it may be. There's loads of different variations, but the big thing is we're working on those ABCs, that agility, that balance, coordination, and it's working on them in a fun way. Okay, depending on the age group as well, then this can be played with 3 small games, or it could be played in one big game, and that kind of varies on whichever group you're working with or age group you're working with. Okay, so the next part then, if we were to break down that small different pitch that we had back here, so the pitch that we had here, and now it's just, we could have 3 variations of this down the field, we're asking each child to stand at a cone. So they're facing off against the cone. The sideline cones that we used, they're going to ask to stand at those, and they're going to be striking over and back to their partner. So straight away now, we haven't had to move any cone so far. We've asked them to stand at a cone, and now we can introduce the striking. So the beauty of this then as well is the one coach that there has now got 6 kids to look after. He can explain, or she can explain, the ready, lock and swing position, explain to them about the ground strike, explain to them about stopping the ball, and there's a ball between 2 straight away. So there isn't any big lines, there isn't any waiting for my goal. They're passing the ball over to each other straight away and getting involved from the very start. Okay, so again, using the sidelines, ball between 2, and working through different bits of the skills. Okay, so in that kind of a setup there, it'll encourage them to maybe say, right, we were playing the match there, we were doing a lot of striking, passing the ball or taking a shot and goal. Now we're going to try and strike it accurately, strike it to our partner, passing it to our partner. Okay, might be playing this for a couple of minutes, and as in what mostly is said in underage, this is boring, it's getting boring, how can we turn it into a game? So we have our cone set out, how can we turn it into the game? Goal to goal, very simple one-on-one game. Okay, so by getting the children in to move in between the 2 cones, you've set it up into a goals. So they're able to take a shot at each other now, and now it adds in that bit of fun. I'm trying to score a goal on my friend's going to try and score a goal on me, and you can rotate them around. So there's different players playing different people each time. Might be the first 3 goals, whatever it is, but it's adding that small bit of competitiveness, small bit of fun, but working on their striking and that bit of fun. The brilliant thing about it is scoring goals. Everyone wants to score goals. So the child is going home to their parents that night or that evening, and they're saying, oh, I got 5 goals today, I got 6 goals today. They're delighted with themselves. Okay, and it's just so important that we have that element, that they're having fun, they're enjoying themselves, and they're getting loads and loads of goals. I suppose what we're aiming for in underage sessions is loads and loads of ball contacts. So trying to include the ball after our fundamental movements. We're aiming for maybe 200 ball contacts in a session, and the way we can do that is having a ball between 2, a ball on their own, and it just helps them the more practice, and as James mentioned earlier about the repetition, getting more repetitions of hitting the ball, controlling the ball, that's what's going to help them improve. If we have them in lines of 3 going out around a cone, striking it back to their partner, or lines of 5, you can be guaranteed that the person having their goal will be concentrating, the person waiting for their goal will be concentrating, but the 3 after that will be missing, they won't be concentrating, and when there's hurleys involved, Same thing could be played here with football as well. Exact same thing. But when there's a lot of waiting around, they're just going to. That's when the missing starts and the concentration gets lost. All right. So moving on then again. So we've done our bit of striking in twos over and back to each other. We've turned it into a game where they're scoring goals on each other. Okay. So how can we move it on again without really moving our cones too much? By adding in a couple of cones in the middle, we've divided up into two different sections. So we're back to our 3 versus 3 again. We're still in our games. We're still in our small little grid. Every coach still has 6 kids. Okay. And this clear out game is, as I said, by introducing those 6 cones into 3 small pitches, we can create a new game. So we have a new game, new fun game again, clear out. So basically all we're doing in this situation then is we're using the skills of controlling the ball, stopping the ball, striking, or ready lock and swing to keep the slitter out of our area. So any ball that comes into our area. So standing at our cone, striking over and back, like what James said earlier, a child could be very might focus an awful lot on using their strong side. Okay, in this kind of a game, the focus is keep the ball out of my area. So if I want to keep the ball out of my area, I'm going to have to use both my sides. If the ball comes down on my right hand side, I'm going to have to strike off my left. Okay, or vice versa, whichever it is. Okay, or right side or left side. Okay. The key to this game then is that having loads of slitters, and having loads of slitters is such an important thing. Having loads of balls, it doesn't make a difference which side or which kind of size ball or which kind of slitters we have, which kind of balls we have, as long as they're age appropriate, as we've said. Okay, so that we're looking at, we're not using size 5 or size 4 slitters, we're using soft slitters, but we have plenty of them. Now we've got 6 teams playing in specific zones. Okay, and it's very easy for us to rotate around. So the team above here at the top might play here for the first couple of minutes, then move down here, and then move down here. So they all get a chance to play a different team. Okay, but it's keeping them occupied. Okay, the main emphasis on these games then is that, as I said earlier, players are getting as many strikes of the ball as possible. Okay, what we're trying to do is trying to get them to control the ball before striking. So when the ball is coming towards them, they're controlling it and maybe shipping it out to their left or their right and striking the ball back. And of course, number one is that loads and loads of fun, that they're enjoying themselves so much. Okay, so looking back over these slides, okay, we've looked at how we could maybe, with very, very few alterations, we can run a 45 minute session there with only adding maybe 5 or 6 cones. Our cones have been laid out the very minute we walked in the gate, and we haven't really moved them or changed them that much. There's been 6 to an area. There's been 1 coach with that 6 or 2 coaches. Really, we can't get enough help when we're helping out, that we can always find a job for a parent or a coach to help out. So in a layout like this, it's very easy, if you have plenty of help there, that you might have 1 coach with 6 kids. Very easy then, maybe if you have more help there, that there's 2 coaches with 6 and 3. One is looking after 3 and the other one's looking after the other 3. So like what we said earlier, this kind of setup, it involves a warm-up, it involves skill development, it involves the fun game, it involves a small-sided game as well. So there's all different aspects that the child can work on. You can see then as well, as James mentioned earlier, when you add that bit of pressure, when you add in that bit of competitive edge, okay, you can see that the skill, once the pressure comes on, the skill, they might revert back to swapping their hands. They might revert back to using their strong side all the time. They might revert back to the little I suppose little things that have been leaving them down or making it difficult for them. So we can focus on that and see when it comes into the game, right, maybe we need to focus a small bit more on our striking in twos, striking goal to goal, controlling the ball. Okay. With all those games, it involves a lot of movement. So apart from when we were striking in twos or striking goal to goal, we've had our fun game, we've had our match, we've had our clear out game. There's lots of movement in that, so they have to follow the slitter. It's getting their eye on the ball, moving the ball, working as a team again to keep the ball out of their area. All right. Again, looking at getting lots and lots of ball contacts for a player. So we try and move away from having 1 ball and 12 players. They're not going to get that much contact to the ball. We can't be realistic about them improving if they're only going to get one touch of the ball every 12 times. We want them to get one touch every 2 times. We want them to get a touch. We want them to have their own ball that they can practice. Okay, what we use with our equipment is so important. Okay, so using stuff like the tires or pole trainers to work on their striking and then bringing it into the ball, or for our smart touch smart touch slitter, or quick touch slitter, or our first touch slitter. They're so important, especially at a young age. So we're gaining confidence when they're striking. Then once this session is set up, it can be moved. It can be set up, and there's no time lost from moving the cones. So you can see with a session like that, whether it's hurling or whether it's football, we can use them kicking in twos, throwing the ball, catching the ball, rolling the ball. So many different aspects and so many different skills, working on their fundamental movements, as James said earlier, to get them to bend down, pick up the ball, kick it back, their hand-eye coordination. But we're not focused now anymore about, okay, what am I going to do next? All I'm as a coach going to ask them to do is, can everybody stand at a cone? And it's very easy then. They'll all stand at, maybe even colour coordinated. I want 3 to stand at the blue cone, 3 at the yellow cone, 3 at this. And it's very easy. They'll react to that very quickly. Our instructions to children at very young ages should be kept to a couple of key points. Not big, long instructions that they're going to forget point 1 by the time you get to point 5 or 6. So if we can ask them, stand at the cone, pick up a slitter, whatever it may be, keep it nice, clear and concise, that will help them engage, help them concentrate and get them involved straight away. If we have to, and sometimes it does happen, that we have to put down cones, we have to lay stuff out, that's when the attention span goes. It can be very hard to gain that back again. Okay. I suppose, I think what's really important with this kind of a setup is that we're looking at getting lots and lots of movement, lots and lots of ball contacts, and trying to take the pressure off ourselves as coaches when we set up something like that. Okay, with all the games that we've included inside in that setup there, it's very easy to change that. I have a setup like that and take out sharks and fish and put in Stuck in the Mud as a different game, different variations of that game. And as James said, we'll send out the fun games that we use and games that we use inside the schools where we're working with kids with all different abilities. And these games, everyone enjoys them. Everybody's involved. And that's the main thing that we want to try and do, especially at 6s and 8s. We want to try and get as many involved at that age group, and that they're having the time of their life, enjoying themselves. And I suppose the big thing, when whatever skills we're doing or whatever coaching we're doing at under 6s and under 8s, we want them to think that hurling and football is the best thing ever. This is what we want to try and do. So when they go home, they'll practice it at home. This is the skill I did at home. So giving them that small bit of homework as well is always brilliant. And then if you can ask them to go home and practice their kicking off the wall, practice kicking with their mum and dad, practice their kicking with their brother and sister. So when they come in the next day, you can say, right, did you practice your kicking? We're going to do a bit of kicking here. And it gives you an opportunity then to fill them with praise, fill them with confidence. And that'll help them want to practice, so that next Friday that they'll be able to show off to their coach again and say, yeah, I was training this week. I was training on my own. I was practicing on my own. And the more repetitions and the more ball contacts they get, the more they're going to improve. Okay, I'm going to hand you back to James again there now for the next 2 slides, and then we're going to look at the questions you've sent in after that. So I'll just hand you back over to James there again.
Yeah, we just put this slide in there, and even just echo what Dave was saying there. I suppose age appropriate development, and also about age appropriate equipment. So I'm stuttering there. Like the thing about the equipment, like we've all done it. We probably like you want to get the balance right between challenging the kid and not making it too difficult. And we've all made the mistake of probably giving a 6-year-old a slitter when they can't find it hard to even balance a beanbag. So there's a big progression to go, even if we take, and I know there's some very new coaches here, that you can't give a 6-year-old a ball and expect him to solo the ball. And even do you know what way the thumb should be on the hurley and all things like that. So like you have to start off with a beanbag, and then probably like a gap we all forget as well is even giving him a bean ball, something that can slightly roll, but it can slightly be flat in the boss of the hurley before even giving him the slitter. And then hitting the ball on the ground, or we go to football and like hitting the ball in the ground. Like I know the young kids probably hate them big. They're useless. Look, Keane Lynch is using a size 5 there, but if there's a kid missing the ball on the ground, well, the first touch sliotar is the answer. It's a bigger ball. Another just little technique that I want to talk about here as well is, this is again hurling related. Like it's very, very hard for you as coaches, and definitely the very new ones coming, to know what what dominant hand a kid has. So what hand they write with and their dominant hand. So a few little good tricks I've seen going around with clubs is that, like on a WhatsApp group or whatever, the coaching officer or whatever, I sent out a message to the parents saying, can all parents just put a band or something on the kid's strong hand, because obviously the parents know. So do you remember them bands they used to have, like up Limerick and all things like, they put that in their dominant hand? Well, then you know. And another nice little gimmick like that then is, if you have a coaching eye, whatever, you can put all the lefties, all the awkward ones there, like myself and Keane Lynch there in the photo, you can put them into the one group. So when you're looking at them, you can see straight away, if you put all the left-handed people together or whatever the case may be, doing a bit of solo or whatever it is, you know if they're switching hands or anything like that a little bit easier. It's just a little gimmick. The other reason why we left this on there is, again, we've all made the mistake. If you look at this photo, I don't know who the young lad is, but obviously the lad in the middle is Colin O'Neill, hopefully our future star. Like, he was probably 16 there, it was 2 years ago in a minor match. That young lad will say he's 6 just for an argument's sake. He's 10 years to go till he gets to that. And we as coaches, we often get questions, how can I get that 6-year-old there on the photo to hit the ball like Colin O'Neill? Well, it takes an awful lot of time, and he's got 10 years to be there. So patience is a virtue, as I would say, in coaching. Like, the other thing I'd say about the age-appropriate development is, like, 2 other lads are going to be doing the under 10, 12 and maybe 13 thing like we're doing here for the nursery program, and 2 other lads are going to be doing a program for teenagers. The teenage one will be all game-based coaching. It's this new philosophy Paul Canuck does. It's all filtering down, and the whole idea about game-based coaching is that you get into a habit like driving your car. So you're rising the ball, like you change a gear when you're rising the car. It all becomes a habit because you're in the game so much, and your spatial awareness improves because you don't get hooked and blocked and things like that. We need to realise we're going way, way back here. We're going back to 6-year-olds. Like David said, you're giving them all a beanbag. You're giving them all a ball. It solves a lot of problems. You're getting as many ball contacts in as you can. And the reason I'm saying that is drills and all this is kind of getting a kind of a hard time lately or whatever. And you need to remember that all drills is repetition. And the only way you can improve any skill is by repeating it. So, like, look, I'd like to echo the point again what Dave said about influencing them to do it at home. Look, there's some people here probably shaking your head and saying, I say it every train and it doesn't work or whatever, but you have to try and influence at home, or even try and give them some little bit of a challenge, even if they're flicking a beanbag up, and see can you beat your time at home, or get your father or mother out to play, whatever. It's just important to say it every session, because as the people here know who are into dealing with kids, whether you're teaching, whatever, if they're not doing it at home, they don't improve. They're not going to improve in 1 hour that you have them for the week, or even if you're training twice a week, whatever. The last thing I'd say about the training session as well, it's a question we get asked an awful lot in foundation courses, is how long should an under 6 session be and whatever. And we had this argument inside in the GAA meeting Monday as well, and we were working it out. If you go to an under 8 hurling blitz, I don't know, some of you might have had kids that went to, they usually maybe play 3 matches. They could be 12 minutes aside, or it could be maybe 15, 14, around that anyway. They've 3 matches played. Now, I know there's a bit of time between the matches, could have the hour done, but they're only technically playing for maybe 36 minutes or 45, and they are tired by the end of it. You never hear coach say, oh, we play another one, they've loads of energy, but they're kind of happy enough to go home after the 3 games. And the point I'm trying to make there is, like, don't be worried about what the under 10 coach or the under 14 coach, if all the teams are training together, are doing. You're with 6-year-olds. They need a break. They go home from school earlier than the rest of the classes in the school. So don't be afraid to give them a break. And I know now you're probably saying, like, if somebody wants to come in there and say, I gave them a break one day and I was an hour trying to get them out of the toilets and all that. But if you give them a break every session, it becomes a habit, and they just sit down for the 5 minutes, or they go into the centre, and straight away when you blow the whistle, and it's a bit like lunchtimes in school, they will line up and they will conform to habit like that. So just keep it in mind moving forward. So Dave, if you would mind moving on to
Yeah, and on that there with the age development, appropriate development, I suppose we have to ask ourselves a question then as well with regards to the skills. You know, if we're going to the under-8 blitz in Martinstown or the under-8 blitz in McNeville, we have to ask ourselves, right, what skills does the child need to play in that game? So if they're playing an under-8 blitz at the start of the year, where it might be ground hurling, so they need to be able to stop the ball, they need to be able to control the ball, they need to be able to strike off left and right. So that's our main skills. They're our main skills to focus on. Everything after that then can come, and a lot of them they will practice at home because they'll see the likes of Keane Lynch or Grod Hegarty or Colin O'Neill or these boys practicing, and they'll say, right, I'm going to practice my row lifting or jab lift. But we as coaches have to look at, first of all, what are the fundamental skills for a 7 and 8 year old before he turns 9? What should he be able to do? And I think looking at the game, if it's ground hurling game or whatever it may be, lift and strike, they're the skills that we focus on mainly, and not to get too carried away or too worried about, oh my God, he can't catch the ball and strike it over from 60 yards. We just have to be a bit patient with ourselves with that.
And going on that as well, and we were talking a bit about it there in the last slide as well, but an awful lot of the questions that came in was about planning a session and how to line them up and all things like that. And just in case you're wondering, or like, the ball, and should he be doing that with one hand or two hands, and what way should he be catching the ball, receiving a hand passing? If you're there kind of scratching your head going, oh, I don't have a clue what way their hand should be, or I don't know the correct technique, and we all don't know the correct technique of every skill, and we often have to look them up. Noel, I'm giving Noel a job there again. Noel might send you on a link there to learning.ga.ie, and any skill, it's a great website, some of you probably know it, but any skill you're not sure of, whatever, you can look in there. It said at the start about the skill cards, and it'll show you the correct technique of any drill or skill, and it'll even show you a couple of games and different ways of doing it. Like anybody who's ever heard me in a schoolyard there, I'm always roaring thumbs, and the reason I'm always doing it is because you use your thumbs so much when it comes to hurling. When you're soloing, our thumbs are in the middle of the hurley. When you're jab lifting, roll lifting, your thumbs are in the middle of the hurley. When you're going for a first touch in hurling, your thumbs are in the middle of the hurley. And I know a lot of that might be too advanced for maybe six-year-olds or whatever, but if they don't get into the habit of using their thumbs at 6, well then they don't do it at 16 or 26. It doesn't just happen all of a shot where they start doing the correct technique. If you don't show them, and that's why I'm going back to the point that you have the most important job in the club, even though as basic as it may seem. If you know the correct technique and you show them by doing it yourself or by saying it, whatever it means, well then they're more they've got a bigger chance of emulating you or doing the correct technique moving forward. So David, you just put up the next slide there, please, if you don't mind. So just keep that in mind, guys, learning.ga.ie, and Noel has sent down a link to it there if he doesn't mind. Yeah, this is just we called it a house of fun. Look, Paddy Butler done it with us. Paddy Butler would have been doing an awful lot of coaching courses. Some of you might know him, some of you don't. But you can relate this to anything. We could relate this to a 6-year-old, or we can relate it to Keane Lynch, we just saw, or anyone on the Limerick hurling team. And the way he even describes it, and I would agree, because Dave said a while ago about fun, like, and he kind of gives a kind of Disney movie kind of feel to it about fun coming in the windows and all that. But the one thing is, like, at the end of the day, it's a hobby. It should be the kids' hobby, right? The fun, it should be like you as coaches should be enjoying going down to the field. If you're there scratching your head and going, oh my God, I have to do it, well then you need to get more coaches in, or you need to do something. Because if you're not enjoying it, well, you have to enjoy it to get full fulfillment and to enjoy doing it. So the fun is just there. It should be part of it. It's just there as windows. It's a part of the house. That's it. The main doorway into every kid's heart and the hallway is games. So we talked about it a while ago, and we'll be talking about in the last slide as well about modified games. So we might just leave that there. Agility, balance, coordination, and speed, right? Basically, it's down to the bottom because it's the foundation, right? If you look at the Limerick hurling team at the moment, right, and they're the most skillful team in the world, and if they can't move, you can't avoid a tackle, and you're not fast, well then the way hurling and football is gone, well then you're not going to win, because teams are moving everywhere. Again, just to even talk about Kyle Hayes the other day, the men must have covered 16, 17 kilometres going up and down the field. I'd hate to be the men to have to follow him. The RJTs then are just running, jumping and throwing. And just as very simple, again, we're coming back to basics. You could easily do this in a field, right, where you have a cone, you have 2 people behind the cone, and then you have a cone about 8-10 yards out, and then you have a cone another 8-10 yards out. Often at times, if you think about it, we talked about a while ago about how many times a 6-year-old sits down for the day, right? how many times does a 6, 7, or 8-year-old jump in the round of a week? Like, I would say there's some kids out there, and I'd say they haven't jumped all year, right? And think about the amount of times you jump, even in if you ever watch an under-8 blitz game, there's a good bit of jumping in it. So just back to basics, getting them into jumping. I often put the ball in the corner, right? A football especially, or even a first touch ball, just a little bit more height. Just run out, jump over the ball, run to the next cone, turn around the cone, feet close to the cone, moving your hands for speed, and jump over the ball again. And like, you'll be shocked the amount of 6-year-olds that find it hard to jump, or they don't even have the confidence to jump. It takes them 1 or 2 times to go to the cone or the ball and kind of half jump over to build the confidence. And again, we're back to basics here, and jumping is a massive, massive part of the game. Or even to live your life, you're going to have to jump over gates, whatever it is. It's an important thing. And look, the last thing, the reason why we really put this in, catching, passing, kicking, and striking, obviously they're the skills of our game. They're the roof of our game. They're the most important thing. But us as coaches, definitely as we get older, we probably concentrate an awful lot. And you obviously you have to, but we concentrate nearly 80-90% on catching, passing, kicking, and striking. So I've often had coaches come to me and coach course said, God, I had a grand under 12 team last year. Now we were hopping and soloing and winning all our football matches, and next thing under 13, 14, bang, plateaued and the whole lot. And like, if you actually break it down and think about it logically or psychologically, whatever, what's happening in that game, like 10, 11, 12, 13 is a massive developmental stage for kids. Some get taller, stronger, bigger. And if you don't do that agility, balance, coordination, speed work, right, whether it be in your fun games, and you can always incorporate it into your matches or fun games. If you don't do this stuff, they're not doing it at home. You're not going to learn it playing the PlayStation, playing Xbox. We've coaches and parents coming up to us the whole time saying, the only hour to get out is whether it's not in school, is with us for that hour. Well, if you're not doing it, they're not going to get it. And that's why we as coaches are talking about this agility, balance, coordination, getting them literally running in a circle where they have to go in between each other. Because if you don't do it, they're not doing it anywhere else. How are they going to improve their vision and the ball and peripheral vision, all them things? So that's the reason why we left it in. It's just a good sketch, and it gives you a good outline, and it's just a good way to just not forget about the running, throwing, jumping, and the agility, balance, coordination. Because obviously the roof is the important part, but you need everything else to be a complete player, to be the Keane Lynch or Colin O'Neill in that photo. So if you go on to the last slide there. So this is just, the last slide is just kind of a roundup of your questions, right? And the one thing I'd say about this is, don't be thinking that your question wasn't part of this. It was just a lot of this, that your question was inadequate or anything like that. A lot of these questions were kind of ones that we grouped together. It was a lot of the same questions coming in. So we talked about this at the GDA meeting about the catering for all skill levels, and it comes into I'll talk about the non-contact games in a minute, but catering for all skill levels, right? And we always get asked, and it's there as well, the weaker and stronger, do you put them together or do you not put them together or whatever. But I think it was Paul Brown or one of the lads anyway came out with it, and it was just a perfect answer, and I thought it was, and Dave said it a while ago, and he's part of the presentation as well. Catering for all skill levels. So you're going to have different abilities. You have it at under 12s, the mind under 6, and a simple way of doing that is give them all a ball, or give them all a beanbag, right? Or whatever you're doing, just give them all a ball. So like I often see, maybe Ollie Coffey, often seen him doing it there now under 6s, whatever. It's a great little thing, and you can kind of interact with the kids when they come back. He just gives them all maybe a first touch ball. They're 6-year-olds that probably never hit a ball before, and he tells them, hit the ball, they're at the sideline, hit the ball over to the other sideline and hit the ball back. And off they go hitting the ball. And when they come back, he'd ask them, how many times did it take you? And of course, they're only 6. They think whoever hit it the most times is the winner. And it's a bit like golf, it's whoever hit it the least. And some of them hit it 1,000 times, some of them hit it 2,000. They're all lying to all that. But again, you're having a bit of crack with them, but you're teaching them the technique, and all it is just hitting the ball over the field and hit it back. Again, we're not trying to overcomplicate anything here, or it's not out of this world how would you do that. It's just hitting the ball over and back, but they all have a ball. I was kind of laughing at the non-contact games because I know it's the whole COVID thing and that's the way we're all thinking at the moment, but I suppose usually it goes the opposite way. It's about contact games and how can I get them stuck in and things like that. Look, there's a thing, the PDSD came out with a load of non-contact, 101 maybe non-contact fun games there as well. Dave, I think, has it on file there. He might send it on as well. Again, a lot of the thing Dave done there was non-contact, the goal to goal and all them things. But again, a lot of them are all in school together, and I don't know. Look, it's a hard one to gauge. And the one thing, like, you don't want, like, I don't want to be encouraging like, not that I don't respect COVID and all this kind of thing, but I don't want to be encouraging too much non-contact, because if you get them into the habit of non-contact and they're down the field at 6 and 7, and then we could have an epidemic at 8 and 9 where the kids are just not getting involved. They don't want body contact at all. So I don't know. Look, there's non-contact games out there, and Dave might send on that PDST one, or I might, or Noel might there as well. The weaker and stronger is a very interesting one. So if we even go back, like, it's about getting a balance, and I know that's a very easy thing to throw, but like, I've often seen it, and you've all come across it as coaches, where you put the strongest lad, just say he's the most developed lad, and if you put him with the weakest lad, and even if they're doing a simple thing of throwing the ball over and back, well, the whole thing is breaking down. So it's very hard to gauge. But if you take Dave's thing there, where you had him in 3 pitches, or even if you had 12 6-year-olds at playing a match, and you put them into a 6-side game, right? Just say you did that, and there was 2 lads absolutely dominating the game. There is a couple of conditions you can do. The old school thing was just throw either one of them into goal, which isn't a bad idea either. They're getting to stop the ball. The goalie might be able to hit it out of their hand. It might suit better because they're able to do that and the rest of them can't, whatever. But that'll only last so long too. Kids want to come out. Another thing you can do, I'm only saying the condition games can often be an answer. Another thing you could do is the team with the most scores, because we all know that Johnny's on one side and Mary's on the other side. And Mary has 40 goals scored and Johnny has 50 goals scored, but there are only 2 scores. You can often say the team with the most scores. So if Johnny scores 50 goals and Mary scores 50 goals the other side, there's still only 1 scorer. So if somebody on Mary's team scores a goal, well, they have 2 scores, and Johnny might have 76 goals scored, but he's still only 1 scorer on the team. So it's teaching the other player a passing element to their game, which they'll need if they want to be moving forward and things like that. The other thing then, and it's a very hard thing in coaching, again, I'm coming back to the perfect world here. I'm sitting in a chair telling you how to control and to coach 36-year-olds, not an easy thing to do. But another thing you can do with a 6, 7, or 8-year-old is, if they're really, really dominant and practice a lot at home, whatever, get them using their opposite side, or every time they do it, reward a free against them or a point against them or something. And it might seem a bit cruel or whatever to stop, but again, it's for their development, and it makes it a level playing field again, and all things like that. So a conditioned rule within the game, if you go back to the coaching model, can often be the answer to that question. I hope it answers your question some bit. The one thing I'd say about a conditioned rule, or when you're teaching a skill as well, and you'll see it there on the skill cards that I was on about, that Noel will send out with learning.ga.e, they always only put down 1 to maybe 4 maximum coaching points. Just remember about your use of language. An example I'll give you is, I went into a hall, this is pre-COVID, I went into a hall one day, I had juniors and seniors out, and I just had them running, because the hall is perfectly, because they can't run into the wall, so you just have them running everywhere, and when you say stop, stop, or when you say go on the floor, go on the floor. But I said you must run with your head up. In other words, what I meant was, so off they went running, and they all had their head up to the ceiling, and I went, oh my God, I'm trying to create a A&E thing here. They all went running with their head up, but it was use of language. What I should have said with eyes looking forward, or I should have used a better line than that. Your use of language can be very, very important, even to 6 and 7-year-olds. And if you bring that back to coaching a skill, so if you're trying to hit the ball on the ground, you're trying to tell them to lock their hands together, get the C swing, keep their eye on the ball. There's an awful lot of things, get their feet right. There's an awful lot of things going at once. So if you can break skills down to 1 to 3 key points, so like I'm in schoolyards or out in fields every day, if I get a 9-year-old and he's struggling to hit a ball or whatever, or a 9-year-old that's brilliant at hitting the ball, like bring it to throw the ball up the shoulder height, keep your hands tight together on the hurley, which is a very, very important thing no matter age you are, and keep riding the ball. And then anything that's different from them 3 things, well, then you can individually go over. Somebody might be throwing it out over the hurley, or it'll be an individual thing after that. Hopefully that makes sense to you. Striking techniques. Again, the one thing I'd say about striking the ball is that they should be doing it a lot. Like Dave said, give everyone a ball, hitting the ball up against the wall. Some of you have facilities where there's a wall there. How many times can you hit the ball off the wall in 30 seconds? Whatever case may be, trying to get them the C swing, because they'll understand the letter C going from school. But like striking techniques is just, it's about repetition. C swing, hands together. Like I've seen it, whether they're 8 years of age, or I've seen it myself playing, or I've seen, even if you go back to Colin O'Neill hitting that ball, and he's a lovely striker of the ball, you'd argue, Warry's hands, any gap between the hands at all, right? I don't care what age you are, can be the difference. That's why Dave said a while ago, the lock. It's literally, I always make the picture of good practice. If you think of a golfer hitting the ball, you never see him with their hands apart. They're always tight together. If you can give him a picture of good practice, or like watch Keane Lynch hit the ball, or Rod Hegarty. And that's the advantage we have now, maybe with 7 and 8 year olds, 6-year-olds mightn't even know it. The advantage any you have with 8-year-olds at the moment is you can compare the Limerick team. They're on telly, they're watching it, it's going on at the moment. Using them is a massive way forward from. But that's kind of it. I hope from my side of view that was making sense, because me and Dave just feel like we're just here talking to ourselves, having a conversation, and he's listening to me and then he talks. So hopefully that was made sense. Again, Dave is finishing with the last 5 there. And if anybody has any questions, Dave is finished you feel more than welcome to put your hand up or unmute your mic or whatever.
Yeah, so just the last couple there that we have, we're looking at the kind of the organisation. So I suppose when we're organising our session, we kind of looked at it there earlier, how we'd set out our drills, or how we'd set out our session for the night, whether it's in the stations. I suppose James spoke about the stations earlier, where we'd 4 stations set up, and sometimes it's a good idea maybe to set up maybe a 5th or a 6th station as well. It mightn't be used, but there's often we've seen it in coach, myself and James, we talk about it a lot, that we might set out a skill or a drill that we've used, and we go, oh yeah, we'll get maybe 10 minutes out of that, and it might fall flat in its face. So it's no harm to have another one maybe set up that we can kind of use if we are waiting for the next station to be ready or whatever. So it's always good to have that small little bit of an extra game in our back pocket, that if we have 10 minutes at the end of a session, or 15 minutes in the middle of a session, or if a drill doesn't work for us, then we have this one to fall back on. And don't ever be afraid of that if we are setting up a drill, or we are using a drill and it doesn't work out for us, a lot of what we've done tonight, and a lot of the games we've worked off tonight, is kind of gone off our experience. Because of our coaching inside in schools and in with clubs, we found games that work for us. And some of these games mightn't work for you as a coach or whatever. You might adapt it or progress it or whatever it is with your group or with your team, and that's excellent. And we love hearing games like that. And we love hearing things like that. But a lot of it is getting out, having that small bit of confidence in yourself, and not being afraid to say it. Right, okay, this drill didn't work tonight. How can I adapt it? How can I change it? I suppose with our organisation, at the end of a session, if you have your 4 or 5 coaches there with you, it's no harm, or even yourself, just having a quick think to yourself, or a chat amongst the coaches, and go, right, what worked well tonight? What games did work well for us? What games, or what kind of skills, when we played the match there at the start, or the match at the end, what games, what skills were they struggling with? Right, can we use that next week? Can you go in now and look at maybe a drill for stopping the ball? Can you look at the drill maybe for the jab lift? Can you look at for a lift for the high catch? Whichever it may be, and see, can we cover those in the next session? I suppose James mentioned it earlier, and it's a massive resource to have, and we use it as GDAs. We've recommended to all clubs that GAA activity planner. The beauty of it is, no matter what group you go into, you can narrow it down, you could filter it out to, I'm with the under 6s or under 7s tonight, or whatever it is. Click on that box. It'll only give you the games that are age appropriate to those. I want to work on striking on the ground. Only will show you those kind of games, and it'll show you a video on the layout, and it gives us great insight on how to work those games. I suppose the next thing then, and keep it engaged and interesting, I suppose we've spoke about it a lot there, about the fun game and elements of fun. And I've said a lot of the coaching courses that I'll do, the one thing I would say to the coaches at the start when we're kind of going through the games, you have to try and channel your inner 6, 7 and 8 year old. You have to think like you're a 6 or 7 or 8 year old, and you have to kind of say, right, I have to kind of say, what would be fun here tonight? What would I enjoy? What gives me the enjoyment in playing hurling, scoring loads of goals, playing matches, moving, being involved with my friends, all those different things, and can we bring all those in together and make a training session out of that? The big thing, I suppose, with keeping kids engaged and interest, is that we can kind of set up our session like the stations, or like the couple of slides that I looked at earlier, that you're going from one thing into the next thing, and there's no problem maybe with a break in between those, but at the same time, at least you would set up, and you're not halfway through kind of going, right, I need to stop this now, I need to set up cones over there and hope that they won't go hitting away all my slitters or whatever it may be. And that kind of leads on to the next thing then about keeping our attention and keeping attention. I suppose we find it now at the moment, I suppose James could say the same as well, that with inside in the primary schools, sometimes we're taking a session when another class might be on a break and they're on another yard, and it can be very difficult to keep our attention. Sometimes we feel like we have to stand on our heads to keep attention. But I think trying to avoid distractions as much as possible. A lot of things, when you are given those couple of bits of feedback or those couple of instructions, to take the balls away, take the slitters away, keep them yourselves, and just maybe even just sitting down or coming down to their eye level, it keeps them engaged. But I suppose the big thing there really is that we aren't giving them big long lectures or essays about what we're trying to do. Short, concise, one or two points. And if they're in twos or if they have a ball each, it's very easy for us to walk around in and go, right, Johnny or Mary or whoever it is, I can give them a small bit more help now because I know everybody else is active, everybody else is engaged, everybody else has a ball, so I'm able to devote a bit of my time now to the couple of players that need it. I suppose that's kind of the thing with the keeping attention, and that it is a tough task, but I think having a lot of help there as well, and we can break our groups down into having a coach per 3 players, if that's possible at all. But I think really with the young ages, especially with the 6 and 7 year olds, 8-year-olds, we should be encouraging the parents to stay around as much as possible and be there, because it is as James said there earlier, like they are so active for that hour that they are going to be tired when it comes to an end. And if we can get parents involved, even if it's just to keep a bit of control, keep an eye on a game, keep an eye on a fun game, keep an eye on a drill, whatever it may be the window in the door for someone to get involved with the club. A lot of parents are just waiting. They don't want to come in, and they might have been involved with the club before, they might have been just moved into the area. They don't want to go in and throw their weight around and say, oh, I want to take over the team. But maybe this small bit of will you watch that match, will you keep an eye on this drill, whatever it may be, that might be the way of their window of getting them into the club and helping them get involved. I suppose our next thing then is our time management, and I think that's where the stations are very important again. It's like we're salespersons for the station training tonight, myself and James, because I suppose we're working off what works. And if you look at your under 6s or your under 8 session, you're not going to be really going over the hour. With your stations then, there's nothing stopping you setting up a station for a couple of different, for your fun game, for your skill, and they're getting everything covered, 10 minutes at each and rotate around. And that gives you your session straight away, your 45 minutes to an hour, giving them a bit of a break in between as well, as they're going from one station to the other, get a drink of water and whatever it may be. But like, our time management comes down to our planning again. I think it's just, it's important that we look at our session. We don't try and fit in, oh, I'm going to try and get them jab lifting the ball, soloing the ball, striking the ball and catching the ball all on Monday night. It's not realistic, and it's putting too much pressure on ourselves and too much pressure on the player. So can we break that down into one skill, focus on that? Can we have a drill for it? Can we have a game for it? And then maybe recap it, use a fun game maybe the next day on that skill and move on to something else. But I think it's really important that we look at our age appropriate, what's important to us. And I suppose what we've worked at during the lockdown there is an awful lot on these player pathways and putting stuff in place for each age group to what they should be able to do, as I said earlier, when they turn 9, 10, 11, 12, whatever it is. And I think that should be our main focus, our main Bible to go to when we're coaching. And I suppose the last thing there is our basics. And James alluded to it earlier there about the step model. Like, the step model is looking at our space, our task, our equipment, and our pressure, our players. So the space we use, is it going to be enclosed, or are we going to give them lots of space to do the skill? What's the task? What clearly do we want them to do? What equipment are we going to use? Are we going to use a smart touch football? Are we going to use a first touch football? How many footballs are we going to use? How many slitters are we going to use? Are we going to use a pole trainer or a tire? It's always about maybe starting at the lowest ebb, starting in the lowest rung of the ladder and trying to build it up, not trying to make it too taxing for them at a very early age. The activity planner, as we said earlier, in ball context. But the big thing is, sometimes as coaches we can think, oh, I have to come up with the next new drill, and they have to run 10 paces and jump over the yellow cone, and then they have to go backwards and hit the ball this way. Keeping it simple is the best way to getting loads of ball contacts, loads of repetitions, and I think that's the That's the one bit of advice I would say to any young coach, any new coach, any coach starting again, any coach starting from the start again, any coach that wants to get involved for the first time. Don't be too worried about trying to think of these new drills. Very, very much in the hurling side of things, grip and swing and getting the hand positioning right is so important. If you can get a child at 6 or 7 years of age, even 5, 6, 7 years of age, and their grip and swing and their hand positioning are correct, you have set that child off and enjoying hurling for the rest of their lives. And it's just so important that we James spoke about earlier about that perfect practice, and we're aiming for that all the time. That perfect practice, or that perfect way of doing it, and that's what we should be aiming for the whole time. Of course, there's going to be different variations when kids go to strike, but we want to put them in the best position. I hope we've kind of covered in the last hour and a bit, kind of maybe different things that might be cropping into your head. We're going to open it up there. If there are any questions, or if there might be something that we mightn't have covered, please feel free to jump in, and myself and James will try and help you. Not often there that a Bruree man and a Garsplan man collaborate well together, but I think we did all right tonight, James. But we'll just leave it open there. If anybody has any questions, you can just maybe raise your hand or just unmute your mic. And thanks very much.
No, I'd say we're good, Davy. I'd say they're sick of listening to me as well, because somebody put me on mute there a while ago, so I'd say it's a fair indication to keep them out shut. Look, guys, I just want to start with fair play to you, man. It's the 2nd of December, the year that was in it with COVID, hardly no training going on. I suppose when this whole thing is over, the new year, hopefully there'll be a massive kick out there to get going. A lot of kids have lost out in maybe 8-9 months of development as players, and it'll all have to be made up, hopefully, just to give them all the chance to be the next Cian Lynch there that we saw on the slide. So look, well done to everyone for logging in. For volunteers to log in there and coming up to Christmas, I'm sure there's a lot of other things you could be doing, or a lot of other things on telly. So look, thanks very much. It shows great interest to you. It's difficult enough, if you don't mind me saying, for myself and Dave to explain. Hopefully we explain a couple of things. As if you were there in person, you could line out cones, or you could explain it that little bit better. You'd obviously get a bit more interaction. But again, look, fair play to you for logging on. I'm very pleased with the questions. You can see that going by your questions, you're already thinking about it, and hopefully, because me and Dave had to do a lot of coach course, and we still have to do an awful lot more to stay going. And hopefully you're going away now with your mind kind of going, geez, like, oh yeah, that point and this point, and it's kind of, the mind is kind of working a small bit and saying, yeah, that was a good point, I must think of that. And that's what tonight was about. Maybe it's a starting block to give you a couple of ideas and to go away and get you thinking. And again, we might overcomplicate things at times, but it's about doing the right technique, whether it be throwing and catching, and making sure they're doing it the right way, and then just repeat, whether it's on their own or in twos. I think we've made that point perfectly clear tonight, that if you can do it with one, or if two being the max, the more ball contacts, the better. Get them into the game as quick as they can, as long as they can do the skill, and you're away in a heck. So thanks again to everyone. I'll leave it at that, because I was already muted by someone, so I think I've enough said.
Don't take it personal, James. That's all right. It wasn't me anyway. No, and look, if there is anything maybe tonight, obviously, look, myself and James and all of us in the GDAs and working in games and development, like we're dealing with this every day, and I hope we kind of try to put it across as simply as possible. But if there's anything there tonight, you might want to ask the question now. But if you want clarification, don't ever hesitate getting in touch with myself or James or Noel. Just and give us a shout. And look, thanks a million for tonight, and hopefully we'll see you very soon.
Thank you.